Good morning and welcome to our 245th weekly webcast. We're coming up on the big 250 milestone. This is an AMA, meaning you can ask me anything like you see on Reddit. You can ask me business questions, investing questions, career questions, questions from the news. Any questions you want to. My humble goal here is to help you take your career to the next level. Now, there's a bunch of questions. Please keep typing them. Before I get started with your questions, I want to talk about one important presentation rule that Steve Jobs taught all of us, and that is to keep it simple. When Steve Jobs presented, he always talked about having no more than 3 images or 3 items or 3 bullet points on a slide. We need to really keep it simple in order for it to be impactful. Now, delivery is very important as well. As Maya Angelou once said, people might not remember what you said, but they'll never forget the way you made them feel. Also, one thing I've found that really helps with presentations is when you have a prop. Now, when I was younger, I don't remember anything the teacher said in school when I was really young. Doesn't say much about me. But I do remember the props that my teachers brought in. So use a prop. So what you can do is you can go to eBay and you can purchase a prop. And after your presentation, you could sell the prop back. So it's going to cost you 10% stock or a 10% fee because you pay 10% to eBay whenever you sell something. Okay, so for example, I once gave a presentation about personal finance. And I started off saying that, did you know that 78% of people that play in the NFL, 2 years after retiring, they're basically broke? Let's talk today about investing for the long term. So that's a great prop example. Now, in terms of these 3 props that I have right here, there's 3 important business topics I want to cover. The first one is about Nintendo. So Nintendo is the oldest technology company in the world. And one of the reasons they're incredibly successful is because they repurpose their content. Meaning, and we can do this in business too, and I'll explain how in a second. Meaning, the older 8-bit or 16-bit or 64-bit Mario games, for example, are repurposed on their newer consoles like the Wii and the Switch, etc. And this is a high margin opportunity for them. Now, probably the best social media icon out there is Gary Vaynerchuk. And what Gary Vaynerchuk does is he talks about repurposing all of his content as well. And you can do the same thing as well, and it doesn't cost you anything to market yourself online. So here's what I recommend doing. Here's what I did. So back in 2013, 14, and 15, I wrote 1 article every single week in LinkedIn. And after 2 years of doing that, I had 104 articles. So I took those articles and I repurposed them into a book. I also repurposed them into courses. Just like with this weekly webcast, my team will repurpose some of the best questions asked and post them on TikTok as well as Instagram. It's a way for us to work smarter and not harder. Now, when it comes to social media content, please be long-term focused. You know, as Warren Buffett said, the longer the view, the wiser the intention. A lot of people give up after posting for a couple of months. Don't get burned out. Stay in it for the long run. I promise you it's incredibly profitable in the long run. And YouTube is the only gold rush in history where it costs you nothing to make the product. And YouTube is the only gold rush in history where you can get access to billions of potential customers for free. The second of 3 things I want to talk about today is having a purpose in your career. If you get out of bed in the morning and you tell yourself you're going to work, then with all due respect, and I say this with love in my heart, you're doing it wrong. You got to find your raison d'être, your purpose. What was the reason you were put on this earth? And for me, it took a long time. It took several decades. It took until my 40s that I realized I wanted to teach. And so my purpose is serving my customers and also building schools in places like Rwanda. So the profits from what I do go to build schools and provide tons of scholarships for students. And so if you tell yourself that you're enhancing your customer's life, you're helping them with your product or service, it makes it easier to go to work every day. And if you haven't yet found your passion, then what you should do is this. Answer this question. You have 1 month off. You cannot go to work, you can't go to school, and you can't travel. what would you do with your time? That is your purpose, your raison d'être, and that should be your career no matter what anybody says. And in order to decide whether or not that's the right career for you, you can set up tons of networking meetings with people on LinkedIn. You can go to my website to learn how to do this by downloading my book on networking at harounmba.com. The third and final thing I want to talk about before you're taking your questions is the importance of marketing yourself and marketing your brand. And Coca-Cola, what Coca-Cola has done for decades is they spend about 10% of their revenue every single year on advertising. So Coca-Cola has about $40 billion in revenue, and they spend $4 billion per year in advertising. So whatever business you're in, if you have your own company or you run a department at a big company, think about that 10% rule. Now, PepsiCo, ticker PEP, spends close to 20% per year. And when you're marketing yourself or creating ads online, which is free to do for everybody through social media content, you have to be long-term focused. And a lot of people are upset whenever they start creating online content or marketing online because they don't get an immediate return on investment. Well, sales and marketing is different. Marketing is like dating. You don't get married after one date. So you date the customer for a while. For example, when it comes to purchasing a Toyota car, for example, you end up seeing 20 commercials first before buying the product or even thinking of buying the product. One last thing about marketing yourself and your company. If you're controversial and tastefully controversial, you can get free advertising. Now, this is what Sir Richard Branson did for decades. You know, when he launched Virgin Cola back in the 1980s, he rented a tank and he declared war on Coca-Cola and he drove it through New York. You can't do that today, obviously. But he drove right by the New York Times headquarters and he got a lot of free PR. Mark Benioff did the same thing when he launched Salesforce.com back in 1999. Salesforce.com is a cloud-based software company and the largest employer here in San Francisco. And what Benioff did brilliantly was his logo was a picture of software with the line through it, software is dead. And that was controversial at the time. And because of that, he got a lot of PR. And so think about being controversial as well. We've never seen a commercial from Tesla because Elon Musk is somewhat controversial. Just make sure that you're tasteful when you do it as well. Thank you for your time. Okay, let me get to your questions now. All right. All right, first up, I've got Ray. Hey, Ray. Ray wrote, hey, and my good friend Ray Edwards is getting married today. I'm going to his wedding later on today. So Ray wrote, here are my questions. Why not buy a Bitcoin ETF instead of Bitcoin? Yeah. So there's a couple of reasons. Number one is liquidity. Number two is fees. And let me show you an example of this. Okay, let me share my screen here. Now, if you're ever doing research on ETFs, and never buy mutual funds, buy ETFs instead, what you can do is you can go to this website called etfdatabase.com. That's etfdb.com. Then what you can do is you can look at cryptocurrencies or you can buy ETFs by geography, etc. So for example, if we click here on blockchain, what you can do is you can look through all the cryptocurrency ETFs here. Now, one of them I happen to know is called BITO, B-I-T-O. So let's go together to finance.yahoo.com and let's type in that ticker, B-I-T-O. Now, what you have to do is you have to look at liquidity. The volume on this one is really high. It trades close to 10 million shares per day. And you only want to invest or consider investing in ETFs or stocks that are liquid, meaning they trade a lot. Otherwise, what happens is these stocks own you in a down market rather than vice versa. What you also want to do is you want to look at the expense ratio here, which is pretty high. This means for every $100 you put into this Bitcoin ETF here, you're going to pay 95 cents or almost $1 per year in fees. And if you bought Bitcoin yourself and put it into a cold storage wallet, you would not be paying this high fee. Now, what you also have to do whenever you look at ETFs, you have to find the company that created this ETF and you have to read what's called the investment offering prospectus. Okay, so for example, before you invest in an IPO, let me just get my IPO prop here. So I invested in Facebook when it was private 8 million years ago. But before investing in Facebook, when it was private, I read the investment offering memorandum. And then when it went public in 2012, you were able to read the S1 filing. Don't ever invest in anything unless you first read the S1 filing for it or the investment offering memorandum. This is created by investment bankers as well as lawyers and lists all the major risks associated with this company. Now, when it comes to ETFs, quite often the fee that you see that rhymed on Yahoo Finance is not accurate. Go to the prospectus and read it first. And I don't care if it's a private company or a public company. If you can't get an investment offering memorandum, don't invest. Yeah. And this is one of the reasons why the Securities and Exchange wants to regulate and will regulate, I think, cryptocurrencies eventually, because you can't get one of these things. You know, white paper is not enough. Okay. Next question is, so I'm having a hard time deciding where to invest. What would be the approach when you want to invest in ETFs in this situation? Yeah, with respect to your earlier questions about Bitcoin. Yeah. So what I would always recommend doing is go to etfdb.com. So let's say that you wanted to invest in Brazil, but you didn't want to buy stocks on the Bovespa or the Brazilian exchange. Well, what you can do is you can go to etfdb.com. Then you can click on ETF by geography. Then what you can do is you can click on Brazil right here. And we see here that there is an ETF for Brazil called EWZ or EWZ, as we say in Canada. And this is a way for you to invest in Brazil. Now, the fees here are quite high, not as high as the Bitcoin one we talked about earlier in this call. So for every $100 you invest in this ETF, you'll pay 58 cents per $100. Not that bad, but it's much higher than the US market ETF, which is VOO, V-O-O. So let's go to finance.yahoo.com again, and let's type in EWZ. Okay. Again, you want to read the prospectus, which is similar to the S1 document. You also want to look to see if it's liquid enough. It's plenty liquid. It trades 23 million shares per day. And the fees here are, it says, 0.58%. Now, if we go to the holdings here of this Brazil ETF, we see that the Brazilian economy is very financial services rich and natural resources rich as well. And you can see that right here, financial services and resources, meaning basic materials, energy, and industrials. And it's no surprise that Petrobras, Petroleum Brazil, is one of the largest holdings here. You want to make sure that usually no investment is that much larger than 10% of an ETF. Okay. Now, if what I do when I'm not sure where to put my money is I invest in this ETF. I have a lot in this ETF, and I've invested in it for quite a while. This is the ETF, and do your research first, for the VOO. Okay. And the VOO represents the 500 stocks that comprise the US markets, meaning the S&P 500. Now, because this thing trades a lot, the fees are only 4 pennies or so per $100 you invest. Now, if we look at holdings here, we'll see the breadth and depth of the US economy. At the beginning of this year, technology stocks comprised 22% of this index. Right now, it's about 29%. The NASDAQ is having its best year since the early 1980s. And you can see down here that this ETF is much better diversified than the EWZ because no position is larger than 10%. It's no surprise that Apple is largest holding right here. Okay. All right, let me get to the next question here. Okay, next question is, if you go to a gathering where you don't know who you will meet, how will you network? How will you start conversations so that they're interesting to the other person? That's a great question. So what I would do is make sure you're aware of that day's news. So every day when I prepare for my day of work, in the shower, I listen to this. Alexa, what's today's Wall Street Journal news?
From the Wall Street Journal.
Alexa, stop. I also listen to the Elon Musk book, which Walter Isaacson wrote. It's unbelievable. You got to buy it. So if you're aware of the big news events of the day, you can talk about that when it comes to small talk in your informational meetings at networking events. What I also recommend doing, if it's a networking event for, say, Goldman Sachs, set up Google Alerts by going to alerts.google.com and enter in the ticker GS. So whenever there's a news release on Goldman Sachs, for example, you'll get an automatic email to your iPhone or Android handset. So you're up to date in real time and can talk about those items in a networking meeting. The last thing you can do is when you meet people or you see the list of people at that event or their name tags, you can go to their Twitter profile or their X profile, as it's called now, and see who they follow. If they follow baseball players and you're a big baseball fan, you might be able to spark up a conversation about that, like how the Blue Jays beat the Yankees like they always do last night. It was a great game, by the way. If they follow movie stars, you can talk about that, etc. Yeah. And if you're not sure what to talk about, just introduce yourself and, ask them, how long have you been at the company, if it's a networking event for you to get a job there, and what's a day in the life like, etc. Okay. Now, if you want to learn how to interview at specific companies, you can do a search for vaultreports.com. And there's a website, I think it's vault.com. And this is what I used in business school when I was interviewing at many different firms. And there are write-ups, PDFs you can buy that tell you exactly how to interview different companies. You can also go to glassdoor.com. Okay, next up, Craig wrote, good morning, Chris. Good morning, Craig. Great to see you. I hope you're doing well. You wrote, I'm glad that you're adding a Python course. Thank you. Especially since Microsoft has added a feature to enable us to manipulate data using Python now. Yeah, it's unbelievable. So Microsoft Excel has sold 1 billion copies since it was introduced in the 1980s. And so it's one of the most important data analysis tools. It's much more important, though, right now, because what happened was Microsoft added support for Python. It doesn't work on the Mac version yet, but I've been using it in the Windows version. And it allows you to use data frames in Anaconda. Now, I'm working very hard on creating a new course with Luca Annison. And Luca and I partnered on a complete artificial intelligence course. This course will be added to my MBA program as well, hopefully by the end of this year as a free elective for people that have bought or will purchase my Haroun MBA program. And what we're doing actually is we're trying to come up with an innovative way to teach Python. And we're going to be using a lot of Lego bricks as well. And we're going to teach you using Lego, which is going to be fun, how to construct and code. So for example, this is a function print, and name is an object that you can define. So we're experimenting with teaching it in a brand new way. We're also going to teach it so that, keeping up the Lego theme, there are different levels. This is level 1. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have a massive capstone project so that by the end, you'll have a massive, massive project constructed in Python, obviously, but this is just an analogy we're going to use. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And Python, it's called Python because the developer of Python, and this is from Harry Potter. I don't like Slytherin very much. But the developer of Python in 1991, he was a huge Monty Python fan. So he's got a great sense of humor, and that's why it's called Python. Yeah. Okay. All right, let me get to your next question here. All right. Next up, we got the Berlin, who's Alejandro, who lives in Southern California. And it was such a pleasure to meet you and your wonderful family at the annual MBA graduation event this summer here in Burlingame, California. And the Berlin's daughter, Alejandro's daughter, is interning with me right now. She's great. So you wrote here, how's everything? I hope you're having a fantastic week so far. Every week is great. Thanks. When you're doing what you're passionate about, every day is great. And I love doing this. Thanks. Okay. And then your question is, the Federal Reserve is aiming for a soft landing, but they said there are factors out of their control. The Fed paused on the hike, but will continue to raise them as long as employment stays stable, interest rates remain elevated. What would be the reason for them to lower them? Yeah. If economic growth contracts, like if we go into a recession, which looks like we're not going to anymore, then they'd start to think about cutting rates. So what the Fed did yesterday was they did not raise rates, but they kind of implied that they might raise rates one more time this year. And that's what Wall Street is expecting. Now, if prices start to rise materially, meaning if inflation goes back up to the high single digits, then they'll raise more aggressively. But I think between now and year end, they'll only raise interest rates by 0.25%. Now, according to Goldman Sachs, there's only a 15% probability that within the next year we'll have a recession. And that's way down from 50% earlier this year. And good news came out of England yesterday. The Bank of England announced that inflation is now declining. It's mid-single digits instead of high single digits, which is a good thing. But the Fed will cut interest rates if we see a contraction in the economy and if we go into a recession. Last thing I'll say on this is that a recession is defined as 2 consecutive year-over-year contractions in GDP. GDP is like revenue for a country. Okay. All right. Next up, hey, Eric, how are you? You wrote, before there is a $2 straddle at $57, opinion thoughts. Yeah, I'd have to know what you're talking about. So for those of you not familiar with the straddle, it basically means a way to buy a put and a call so that you're protected if a stock moves either way. The only money you lose is what you pay for the put and for the call. And if you want later on today, during Gold and Platinum MBA office hours, you can show me which option you're talking about and I can run through with you. Yeah. Okay. And then you wrote, what percentage short and long should you keep in a balanced portfolio? I don't recommend that my students short stocks because the downside, the amount of money you can lose is unlimited. So for example, back in January of 2021, GameStop, the stock ticker GME, went up 29.4 times in the month of January alone. It was unbelievable. And a lot of people, lost a fortune, and certain hedge funds like Melvin Capital, which is a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund, went belly up. With a short, there's unlimited losses. So please don't short stocks. If you want to bet against a company, you can buy what's called a put. Okay. And if you buy a put, what happens if the stock goes down, you make money. If the stock goes up, all you lose is what you purchased for that put. Yeah. Okay. All right, next question is, Microsoft was trading at 35 to 45 times earnings in the 1990s. It's been stuck around there until recently. Does this resemble Nvidia? Yeah, 2 completely different companies. Nvidia has more exposure to AI than Microsoft does. Microsoft, of course, is licensing ChatGPT as part of Bing Chat. Now, the best way to think about, and this is a prop from the upcoming Python course, but the best way to think about PE and any fractions for the rest of your life is I want you to think of the denominator in any fraction as being the number 1. So if a company trades at 35 times earnings, that means for every $1 in earnings on the denominator, for every $1, investors are paying 35 times that $1. And if a company's earnings are growing really, really fast, then investors are willing to pay much more than 35 times that $1. So as you compare and contrast Nvidia, ticker NVDA, and Microsoft, ticker MSFT, look at the earnings growth over the next 5 or 10 years for those 2 companies. Nvidia's earnings growth are probably going to be a heck of a lot higher than Microsoft's earnings growth, which is why Nvidia trades at a premium multiple to Microsoft. And the best rule of thumb to use is, so the average company in the S&P 500 historically trades at around 15 times earnings. And the average company in the S&P 500 has about 15% earnings growth. So for every $1 in earnings for the S&P 500 historically, roughly, investors are paying 15 times that $1, PE, $1.15. And if a company, you can use what's called a PEG ratio to understand if stocks are undervalued or overvalued. And what a PEG ratio means is you look at price earnings to growth. So if the S&P is trading at 15 times earnings and it's growing at 15%, 15 over 15 is 1. That's a price to earnings to growth ratio of 1. Now, if a company is growing much, much faster than others, it will trade at a premium multiple. But if you ever see the price to earnings to growth ratio at, say, 2 or higher, it's probably overvalued, probably. So if a company growing earnings at 15% was trading at 30 times earnings, meaning twice its growth rate, then that would mean it's overvalued. And this is a basic rule of thumb to use. Now, whenever and if a company is trading at less than a PEG of 1, then it might be a buy. Now, obviously do your research and never value companies based on what Wall Street is valuing companies at. What I want you to do, and I teach this in my MBA program and my courses, is I want you to model earnings for the next 5 or 10 years. And I teach you how to do this based on my work experience on Wall Street. Then what I want you to do is I want you to value the company based on your earnings expectations in 5 or 10 years. And this is what I did when I invested in Amazon and LinkedIn when it was a publicly traded company. And people thought I was crazy. People said, Chris, you're investing in Amazon and LinkedIn. They trade at over 100 times earnings. Those are widow makers. Bad thing to say, but that's what they said. And I would say, no. Amazon and LinkedIn at that time are not trading at 100 times earnings. They're trading at 4 times my earnings estimates in 5 years. And by forecasting your financial statements and valuing companies based on your model, based on earnings estimates of yours in 5 or 10 years, it allows you to be patient and long-term focused. And you tell yourself, I don't know the path, but I know the destination of this stock. Otherwise, what happens is if you rely on other people's research or other people's valuations, you sell at the worst time. And Warren Buffett once said, the New York Stock Exchange is the only store in the world where consumers sell stuff and it goes on sale. Always be a contrarian in business. Okay. All right. Question is, in the options market, which is better, CBOE or E-mini, you want to look at the fees and you want to compare the pricing of both of those. And during the gold and platinum office hours today, if you want, what you can do is over Zoom, you can show me specific options instruments and I'll give you more detail on it as well. Yeah. Or go in the MBA program. I know you're in the gold program, Eric. Eric's from Florida. Go to in the MBA program, go to FA44. That's Finance and Accounting Semester 4, class number 4, for a 30-hour elective on options. Yeah. But I'll help you nevertheless during office hours later today. Okay. Next up, Alejandro wrote, Chris, I see in a report that the 10-year Treasury yields are approaching 2007 highs. What does that comparison mean, good or bad? Yeah, it just means that interest rates are going up. That's all. And the way to look at that is you can go to treasury.gov, okay? And you can go here to data, and then you can go to the yield curve. Okay, so what you're talking about is based on the yield curve. Okay, so let's go to the current month. All right, so we see here that the 10-year is 3.79%. Okay, and that's the highest it's been in a while. Let's go back to 07 and see what it was. In 07, it was, apply. Yeah, it was higher in 07. Yeah. And I remember back then, there was a massive bubble in real estate. And so the government was raising rates. Yeah. And then, of course, 2008 happened when we were within 24 hours of bank machines not working due to reckless mortgage underwriting. Okay. But I think things are better now than they were back then. Okay, next up we have Melody, who goes by How To Vids. Great to see you. I thought of you last week when I talked about the equipment to use for webcasts. I talked about the Canon M50, which you have as well. You wrote, hi, Chris. Hope you and the family are doing okay. Likewise, always great to see you. Hope your 2 children are great as well. You wrote, this week was my birthday. Happy birthday. It was a blessed day. Awesome. We had breakfast today, and it was awesome. Very cool. And happy birthday to you as well. You wrote, do you have a SQL course? So SQL stands for Structured Query Logic. Basically what that means is how do you look at a database and get information from it? Well, I talk about that indirectly in the Complete Excel course that you have as a free elective as part of the Gold MBA that you signed up for a couple of years ago. Also, in the Python course, we'll introduce that as well. Now, learning SQL is really easy. Right? It's like talking English with fewer words to a database. Yeah. Okay, but I don't have a specific course on SQL. Okay, and then you wrote, my son has to go to a career fair in about an hour. Any advice you can give him? He's very polite. I remember I met him at 4 p.m. on October 31st, 2019 on this webcast. I've got a good memory. Yeah, he was very polite. He said my name correctly. He said, nice to meet you, Mr. Haroun. Most people say Mr. Haroun. Oh, the way you'll remember my name is Haroun rhymes with baboon. Then you'll never forget it. Okay. What I would tell him is what I said earlier in today's call, and you can rewind it if you want to. Basically, find out who's going to be there, if he can find out. and do a background check on them, meaning who do they follow in Twitter, or what groups are they in on LinkedIn, etc. And whatever company he's interviewing for or networking about, he can always set up Google alerts for as well, and have him listen to the news as well on his way to that meeting. Yeah. And if you tell me what companies are there, I'll give you more insight in terms of exactly what he can ask. Yeah. But when in doubt, just ask people about their career trajectory. How long have you been at the company? What is a day in the life like in the company? Yeah. Ask questions. People love talking about themselves. Okay. Eric wrote, how should the U.S. respond to China taking pandas from the National Zoo? I don't know anything about that. But I will say in my upcoming Python course, we are teaching pandas. And this is a Lego piece, which is our theme for the course. I got to show you what else we're using for this course. It's going to be fun, man. So we've got a Lego theme for the course. And so the exercises are going to include Lego characters as well. That's Baby Yoda right there being held by Boba Fett. I don't have the Mandalorian character yet. Yeah. But pandas is a way for you to do advanced data analysis in a faster way on Python. Yeah. And NumPy is as well. Okay. And then next up, Melody wrote, I've started thinking twice about buying anything now. I think you're referring to stocks in general. Yeah. If you're not sure what to buy and you haven't maxed out your 401k yet, just put it in the S&P 500. If all you did was you maxed out your 401k and put 22,500, whatever it is, into the S&P 500 every year, in 20 years, you'll have over $1 million. If you're supposed to, you have over $2 million. If you did it for your two children's in their educational retirement savings program, then in 18 years when they go to college, if they're just born, then you'd have 700 grand per kid. So if you have two kids and if you can max out the educational savings account and your 401k every year, you'll have, see, 1 million, 2 million, $3.4 million. But if you're not sure what to buy, make sure you do thorough research. And in the MBA Degree Program, if you go to EMS 4-2, that's Economics Management Strategy, Semester 4, Class 2, I have a 100-step template where I ask you 800 questions about a certain stock or any stock. And it creates for you a report which will help you crystallize your thought process to understand from your due diligence process perspective if you should buy the stock or not. Always do the research first. Kind of like whenever you start a business, you have to write a business plan because failing to plan is planning to fail. Okay, that was my cheesy Head and Shoulders 1980s commercial quote of the day. Yeah. All right. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. Okay. Then you wrote, my company's RSU ESOP value in my portfolio crosses 30%. Do I need to trim it? What I would do when you look at your portfolio and in general for everybody, I would make sure that no stock is more than 5% of your portfolio. And I always recommend having a minimum of 20 stocks in your portfolio. Now, if you don't have time to do investment research on individual stocks, then you can buy ETFs. And ETFs can be 10 or 20% of your portfolio if you feel comfortable after doing your research on that ETF, meaning if it's a major ETF like the VU, for example. I'd also make sure that no more than 20% of your portfolio is in any one particular sector, like technology, healthcare, etc. Okay, Melody wrote, why do you think Nintendo does not allow for open platform gaming? And then what's your TikTok handle? My TikTok handle is first last name, Chris Haroun, all one word. Thank you for that. And we do a lot more TikTok than we do YouTube. In terms of Nintendo, they've thought about it before. They've kind of tested the water by having this Pokemon Go game, which my son Dylan is still playing every single day with his buddies. They've also made a Mario game and also a racing game for iPhone just to test the market. But what Nintendo does is they want to lock you into their ecosystem. And that way they have more pricing control in terms of repurposing content in their ecosystem, like older Mario games. And they're a very paranoid company too. And I met with the CFO I remember years ago when I worked at Citadel, I met with him in Tokyo. I think it was in January 2006. And I asked him, why are you very careful with your balance sheet? At that point in time, they had over $8 billion cash on their balance sheet. And at that point in time, the CFO told me it's because they're competing with companies with massive balance sheets like Microsoft as well as Sony. So they're a very paranoid company. And as Andy Grove once said, the late great co-founder and CEO of Intel, only the paranoid survive. Yeah, they want to control their ecosystem. Yeah. I love Nintendo. Okay, and the Switch 2 might be announced before year end. We'll see. All right, Trish. Hey, Trish. Trish wrote, I took the gold MBA course. Do I need to pay for the short course for financial analysts? It's $9.99. No, you don't. I see you change your name. You used to go by Patricia. You're from New Jersey. You also have an e-bike. I remember talking to you about that a couple of years ago. I hope you're doing well. It's great to hear from you. No, if you buy my silver, gold, or platinum course, you don't have to sign up for any of my courses. They're provided as electives. And if you want any one of my individual courses, and the content's included and updated in the MBA program, but if you want one of my individual courses, you can always email support@harounventures.com. And Trish, I'll take care of you. Yeah. Good to see you always. Yeah. Okay. All right. Next up, Alejandro wrote, Chris, Canadian banks have a negative amortization. What does that mean for the banks? Yeah. I'm not sure from an accounting perspective what they're referring to, but whenever I value companies, I love to use pro forma financial statements. So when companies report earnings, they usually give you two sets of financial statements. They have GAAP and non-GAAP. Okay, GAAP is the accounting stuff, which includes depreciation and amortization, but it's not a cash expense. So I love to look at non-GAAP, which means pro forma. So I usually exclude that stuff. Now, it might be a Revenue Canada accounting issue I just don't understand. Yeah, but the Canadian banks are relatively low risk in general. There's only 5 or 6 of them. And in Canada, it's a much more conservative financial system to the extent that you cannot write off the interest on your mortgage in Canada. And that's one of the reasons why the Canadian real estate sector did not have as material of a decline as the United States did back in 2008. Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Now, a quick reminder, you can't, for some reason, YouTube does not allow you to enter in links when you post your questions. Yeah. If you want me to go to a certain link, just say it like this, like CNN.com, CNN space DOT space COM. Yeah. Okay. Next up, Uncle Coco. Great to see you. First time I've seen you on the call. I hope you join us again. So Uncle Coco said, would you ever do financial Python, like pricing options in Python? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of the biggest hedge funds and investment firms use Python a lot when it comes to machine learning and for algorithms for financial analysis. It's great. But what they do is they use pandas or they use NumPy. Yeah. And the way you do that in code in Python is you just simply type 2 words, import pandas or import NumPy. And then you can use that module as well. And we're going to be teaching that in a lot of detail in my upcoming Python course. And in the Python course, you'll get this book for free, which is exclusively available to students that take the course. Luca Anderson is going to be flying in as well, again, from Serbia. He's a good friend of mine and my most important business partner. Okay. And then Eric wrote, would Warren Buffett consider symbol OLN? Yeah. So I'll take a look in a second. But when it comes to Warren Buffett, he usually buys stocks that are relatively cheap, have high dividend yields, are low risk as well. And he's bigger in real life. And I've met him. He actually guest lectured in one of my classes at Columbia University when I was doing my MBA there 8 million years ago. He also went there. That's the only thing we have in common now. And I remember during that class, one of my classmates asked him, what do you think of a certain tech stock? And he was, my colleague was pitching a tech stock. And Warren Buffett very gently interrupted the colleague of mine and stopped him from pitching the stock. And he said, son, I don't know where the stock is going to be in 20 or 30 years or where their product cycle is going to be in 1 or 2 years. So I tend to avoid that type of company. Yeah. So only invest in what he understands. When he was there, his wife was there as well. God bless her. She passed away. But she was teasing him at the time because the only book that he brought on his honeymoon was The Intelligent Investor. Yeah. Now let me take a look at that ticker for you. Okay. So let's go to finance. And you can always find out what Warren Buffett owns. By law, if you manage more than $100 million, every 3 months, what you have to do is you have to disclose to the public what you own. All right, let me type in that ticker. OLN. Olin. I don't know this company. Let's see here. All right. Yeah, it's got a low PE. That's typical Warren Buffett. It's got a nice dividend yield as well. Wow, that is cheap. I would do your own research on it. Eric, you can always go to EMS 4-2 in the MBA program for the investment template that you can work on. And I would find out, why is it cheap? Why is it cheap? Is there outstanding litigation, etc.? But this is the type of company I would roll up my sleeves on and do work on pretty quickly, because it does look attractive to me at a low PE and a decent dividend yield as well. And it's liquid. Yeah. Huh. Make sure that you read the 10K, meaning the annual report, as well as the 10Q. And you can always go to sec.gov to read those financial documents and listen to the past 6 earnings calls as well as you build out your financial model, particularly what the financial analysts on Wall Street ask. Okay, so the way these calls work is management will talk about the quarter for 30 minutes. They'll say, we had another great quarter, usually. And then they'll open it up for questions from Wall Street analysts. And I'm going to have a couple of Wall Street analysts on this weekly call in the next few months, kicking it off with a guy named Brent Thill. So Brent Thill is an analyst, a software analyst at Jefferies. He used to work at Credit Suisse, Prudential, Citigroup, etc. He's one of the best analysts on the street. He's worked on some of the biggest IPOs in software history. Brent Thill is going to be on this weekly webcast on November 2nd. So you'll get to ask him questions on how he analyzes stocks. I have many other people coming on as well as a senior vice president from ServiceNow, who heads up their education vertical, as well as a venture capitalist on October 5th. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be having a lot of guest speakers on this call, and you'll get to ask some questions as well. And of course, during these weekly calls, I'll answer all of your questions as well. Okay, and I'll let you know well in advance when and who is coming on the call. Yeah, just make sure you subscribe to my email list. Okay. All right. All right, next up, Alejandro wrote, Chris, you mentioned that software companies are the best companies to invest in, since there are many new robotics for farming, excavators, food services. What are some companies and what to look for? Yeah, I don't think that there's probably many software companies that have robotic capabilities. The reason I like software companies as opposed to hardware companies is because software companies, they don't have inventory issues at all. Right? Because there is no inventory for software. They just kind of sell it online. The only robotic company I can think of that has software is iRobot, and I think Amazon bought this company. I think, yeah, this is the only one I can really think of. And this thing, I'm sorry, it's dirty, but this thing cleans my floor every single day at like 5 in the morning. And little side note, the air quality is really dangerous where I live right now. I think it's because of fires, and so I recommend everybody get an air purifier for your home if the air quality is not safe. Now, here's how to tell if the air quality is safe or not. Hey Siri, what is the air quality?
The air quality is considered unhealthy for sensitive groups at 116 right now.
Yeah, it's deadly. Alexa, what's the air quality?
According to airnow.gov, the air quality in hills is moderate, with an air quality index of 100. If you're unusually sensitive...
Alexa, stop. Yeah. But I have a purifier here in my house. If you have children, please get one as well. And ask SIRI
I don't know that.
Thank you. Ask SIRI or ALEXA about the air quality where you live. Yeah. Okay. All right. What do I got next here? Okay. Oh, Manas, how are you? And you change your moniker to Manas Roy NFTs. Awesome. When you're looking at NFTs, make sure to look at supply. I invest a lot in baseball cards. When you're looking at NFTs or baseball cards or sports cards in general, make sure you focus on supply. Because if an NFT has a very high supply or there's too many baseball cards, then what happens is, from a supply demand perspective, it's a bad investment. That's why I love buying real estate. As my grandfather, I miss you, Gramps, used to say, Chrissy, buy land, they're not making it anymore. Okay. Bonus points for anybody that can tell me what card this is, okay, and how much it's worth if it's a real version. This is a pretend version. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, next up, Pulasi. Hey, Pulasi, how are you? Good to see you too. Hey, Chris, how are you? I think you're okay. Thank you. I feel great. Thank you. I'm always good. Thank you. Next up, Manas wrote, rates are still now. Fed says they'll keep it high even in 2024 unless something breaks. Do you think they'll take the risk of keeping it high in the election year? By the way, have you noticed the markets are always up in election years? 2020, 2016. Yeah, I would go and back test that as well. And you can do a regression analysis, which I teach in the Complete Artificial Intelligence course, which is an elective you can get in the MBA program in the very last lecture. So the Federal Reserve is an independent body. Okay, it doesn't listen to what Republicans or Democrats tell them. It's supposed to be independent with their own Fed governors as well. So I don't think they're going to be swayed by what politicians say. They're going to look at the data themselves. Now, it would be fiscally irresponsible for the Federal Reserve to say that, oh, they're going to be cutting rates. They have to give the impression that, hey, if the economy grows too quickly and inflation spikes, we are going to raise rates. They have to give that impression. There's posturing involved. Now, whenever you look at the Federal Reserve, or FOMC, that's Federal Open Market Committee minutes, which come out every couple of weeks, what you do on Wall Street, what I used to do, is I would take the minutes from the last meeting and the minutes from this meeting, and I paste them both into Microsoft Word as separate documents, and I do an auto compare to see if any wording changed, qualitative wording. So if the Federal Reserve said in the last statement, we are somewhat worried about inflation, and in the current statement, they said we are very worried about inflation, then that will probably signal that, oh my gosh, there's a higher probability you're going to raise rates. Yeah. Okay. All right. Next up, I've got here, Manas Roy, who teaches on Udemy, wrote, I just released some more courses on ChatGPT and AI tools. I'm loving all the huge credit goes to you for making me a teacher. I'm a servant, no, please, of my dear students, yeah, and I'm here to serve them. Awesome. I love it. I love it. And one thing I'm going to be doing with my Complete Artificial Intelligence course, I'm going to update it within a couple weeks so that we talk about DALL-E 3. DALL-E 3 was just announced. This is a huge deal. So DALL-E is the imaging software you can use online from ChatGPT's parent company, OpenAI. And so DALL-E 2 is out right now. It's not that good. What's much better than that is a process or a service called Midjourney, which is hard to use. DALL-E 3 is unbelievable. Okay, and it's coming out in a couple of weeks. It's going to be a game changer. It's much easier to use than Midjourney is as well. Yeah. So if I were you, if you have time in us, what I would do is I would immediately release a DALL-E 3 course. Yeah. The second it becomes publicly available, which I think is going to be about 2 weeks. Yeah. Or at least send out an email announcement about it. And I saw your email announcement this morning as well through Udemy, and thank you for that. Okay. Okay. Next question is, China is drifting to a recession. Yeah, it's sad. Maybe this means they'll buy less U.S. debt for now. Will a China recession harm the supply chain and global trade in the long run because their economy is huge? Yeah, it really is the law of large numbers, right? So the Chinese economy, like any economy or big company, can't grow high single digits forever, right? I mean, you look at companies like General Electric, now they're big companies. eventually they reach a massive scale where they just can't grow that much. And that's why the US economy will never grow at a normalized rate of more than 2 or 3%. It's just really, really big. That's all. Now, in terms of the impact of China on the United States, it's fascinating that we haven't seen as big of an impact this year from the economic slowdown in China on other countries like the United States. And I think one of the reasons why the American economy is doing so well this year, relative to expectations, is because the stock market is up. Hear me out on this. If the stock market is up a lot, then you feel richer on paper. Therefore, you spend more. And 2/3 of the United States economy is consumer spending. It's not big business. Now, what China is doing is they're very much focused on growing their domestic economy, so they're not as reliant on exports in the future. But the great thing about globalization, meaning everybody is interconnected, is it ensures that we coexist peacefully longer term. And that's one of the reasons I'm a big fan of globalization. Okay. All right, next up, Manas wrote, Elon announced he will not let users use Twitter, meaning X, for free. Is it a death bell for X, as majority of users are free ones? What are your thoughts? Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. He's pretty controversial. And as I mentioned earlier when I was talking about marketing, controversy gets you free PR. So we're talking about it today, which helps Twitter. I don't think he'll do that. I really don't. And if you get a chance, make sure to read or listen to the new book on Elon Musk. I'm listening to it right now. Alexa, read my book. Just 1 second.
Getting your selection from Audible. Resuming Elon Musk.
Alan Cocconi, who had
Alexa, stop. It's fantastic. Fantastic, yeah. It's by Walter Isaacson. Yeah, and he made the Steve Jobs biography as well years ago. It's incredible. This book's like 600 pages. It really tells you about why Elon is the way he is today. Yeah. Okay. Next up, Michael. Hey, Michael, how are you? Michael wrote, hey, Chris, hey, do you think it's a better idea if you have spare money to overpay for a mortgage or invest in the likes of the S&P 500 ETF? It all depends on the relative valuation of property. Okay, so what you might want to do is you might want to use Zillow to find out what the valuations are for houses in a certain neighborhood. And what you always want to do is you want to buy the crappiest house in the nicest neighborhood instead of vice versa. But it all comes down to relative valuation. Now, if you don't own a house or an apartment, I recommend really looking to buy when you can. Because if you rent for, say, $600 a month for 50 years, that's countless millions of dollars down the drain. But if that $600, for example, goes towards a mortgage, even if you overpaid initially for the house, in the long run, you're going to be better off. Yeah. Now, you can also use ChatGPT plugins to do research. So there's a ChatGPT plugin called Top Hat. And what you can do is you can ask it to give you a list of the 10 cheapest houses in this zip code or postal code with 2 bedrooms or less, for example, and put it into a nice table, and it'll do it for you with links to the houses. Yeah, try it out. You got to use ChatGPT 4 for that to work. And if you want me to go over that again or give you a live demonstration of that right now, I'm happy to do so. Yeah. Okay. All right, next up, Manas wrote, there's a company called Bitfarms, which mines Bitcoin. Should I meet its CEO because maybe I'm interested in the stock? I'm skeptical because of the price. But what would you have done? Yeah, if you can get access to the CEO, definitely interview them after you do your due diligence. Never invest in the company and only invest after you. Never meet with the CEO of a company and then invest in the stock. Do your research first and interview the CEO as the last step. And the reason I say that is CEOs are the best salespeople in the world. They're entrepreneurs. There's a reason why they became CEO. And what I recommend doing, Manas, because you've got a great social media presence when it comes to cryptocurrencies and NFTs, etc. What I recommend that you do is interview them on your YouTube channel if you want to. And after that interview, you can even send a replay of the interview to your students. Yeah. And that's a great way for you to repurpose content. Okay. But I would do a thorough research write-up on that company. You can go to EMS 4-2 in the MBA program if you want. Yeah. Okay. Okay, next question is from Trish, who wrote, do very high interest rates affect the former middle class more as compared to billionaires? Yeah, I'd say that everybody is impacted. So billionaires pay much less in taxes, percent-wise, than everybody else. And the 400 richest families in America only pay about 21% tax versus the top tax bracket of around 40%. And one of the reasons why is because in order to pay tax, you have to have a taxable event, like you have to sell shares in the company that you own, for example. And so back in 2007, Jeff Bezos, who was a billionaire many times over that, back in 2007, Jeff Bezos didn't pay any taxes. In fact, he got a tax refund from the IRS of $4,000 per kit. That's $16,000. He's got 4 kits. So if you have to look at it in terms of what happens if interest rates go up to a specific billionaire. If the billionaire owns a lot of shares in a high growth tech stock that's got a high beta, meaning it's volatile and risky, then when interest rates go up, high growth stocks like speculative stocks get murdered. They go down quite a bit. So it would impact them more. Yeah. But everybody gets affected whenever there's an economic downturn. Yeah. And I certainly have seen it the past couple of years as well. Yeah. Okay. But I do think there should be tax reform to the extent that billionaires should pay, the 40% tax rate, whatever it is, per year. Okay. I know that's debatable because some people say, "Hey, Chris, wait, they're creating jobs," but okay. But I am a capitalist. You guys know that. Okay. Next up, Manas wrote, people are speculating too much on XRP, which is Ripple. They're too bullish short term on it, and moreover, it's fighting the SEC at the same time. What are your thoughts? Yeah, so Ripple is cryptocurrency XRP. The founder actually lives around the corner from me here. It's geared towards financial services companies. I've owned it for years. I disclosed that a long time ago. I own 4 cryptos: Ripple, Bitcoin, Litecoin, as well as Ethereum. And what happened with Ripple was shocking. So the SEC in the Southern District Court in New York was suing Ripple. Right, and it was a lawsuit that went on for a couple of years, and they were suing Ripple because Ripple raised over $1 billion without issuing a document like an S1, for example. And so everybody in the world that invests in cryptos was watching that Southern District of New York court case, because they thought if Ripple lost this court case, which everybody expected them to do, then it would set a precedent that in order to raise money for a crypto, you have to issue like an S1 filing, meaning you have to register with the SEC. Somehow they won that court case. I don't know how. And that's why a lot of people are more bullish now on Ripple. Okay. I'm sure there's a lot of short covering as well, which led to a little bit more of an upside than expected. My personal thought process, and I don't know anything, is that the SEC is going to win in the long run, and that all cryptocurrency companies will have to register with the SEC. And I think that's the right call. And look, I'm more of a libertarian. I believe in small government, but I also believe in consumer protection. Like, imagine investing in an IPO if the risks weren't disclosed first. And when you do due diligence on a cryptocurrency company, you can't just read the white paper. That's not much to go on. And 95% of all cryptocurrencies are scams anyway. We need better disclosure, and I think the SEC will regulate cryptocurrencies in the long run. Okay. All right. Okay, next up, Michael. Hey, Michael. Michael wrote, Berkshire, Warren Buffett's company, has 47%. Yeah, I know where you're going with this. Has 47.8% of its holdings in Apple. How does that factor into your advice to not have more than 5% of your portfolio in one company? Yeah. So my personal opinion is I'm a little bit more risk averse. I would never, and Warren Buffett's way better than I'll ever be at investing, please, but I would never have 50% of my portfolio in one stock. That's just too much exposure, man. Now, one of the issues with Berkshire Hathaway and very, very large mutual funds is they're so darn big that there's only a certain number of stocks that they can invest in. it's hard to turn a big ship around. The same thing when it comes to venture capital. A lot of venture capital firms are getting really big. There are multi-billion-dollar funds, and they can't invest in anything that will move the needle unless it's a massive company. And that's one of the reasons why Uber, before it went public, had many large venture capital firms putting in $50 to $100 million investments in Uber. I'll give you a great example of this. So Andreessen Horowitz, which is one of the best venture capital firms in the world, they've got like a multi-billion-dollar portfolio of venture capital positions. Years ago, they invested a small amount, the most they can get, in Instagram. And they made it's like 100 bagger. And it moved their portfolio by like 0.2%. That's it. So the problem is with very large venture capital firms, and I'm not dissing Andreessen Horowitz because I think they're great, but the problem with large venture capital firms or mutual funds like Berkshire, for example, is that once they get so big, it's hard for them to invest in anything that's not extraordinarily liquid, like Apple, for example. Yeah. Great question. Okay, next up, Pulasi wrote, Chris, do you have any tips for managing loans and credit card for finance benefits? Yeah, I would use an online service if you can, like Quicken, for example, to manage your finances. And so I used to do this years ago. I would have my credit cards and and I used QuickBooks as well to manage my hedge fund years ago. So I would have QuickBooks or Quicken as a personal investor, import all of the files directly from the credit card company's website, the bank's websites, etc. And then you can use artificial intelligence. All these systems have AI now to tell you what debts you should pay off first. Something as simplistic as, hey, pay off your MasterCard before your Amex because the rates are lower with MasterCard, for example. Yeah. All right. And I think you can look at Mint as well. Do a search on that. That might help. All right, Renvir, hey, how are you from Mauritius? Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Okay. Next up, Michael wrote, what are your thoughts with investing in cybersecurity companies like CrowdStrike and Cloudflare? Hacking is thought of as the biggest threat to most companies. Yeah, I think it's going to get a lot worse too. I don't know if you guys watch The Morning Show. It's a great show on Apple TV. I watched season 3, episode 3 last night, and it was about the media company getting hacked. But I think it's something that a lot of companies are going to spend more money on. And basically, the SEC actually recently created a new law that you have to disclose cyber hacks, right? You have to disclose much more of them as well. And that's incredibly positive catalyst for companies, like CrowdStrike and Cloudflare. Now, when you do your research on those two aforementioned stocks, make sure that you forecast your earnings 5 or 10 years into the future and value the company on a price to earnings basis based on your earnings estimates in 5 or 10 years, and do a full research report on it as well, which is one of the many things I cover in my MBA program. Yeah. Some coffee. And I'm using a straw because I'm trying to get my teeth a little bit whiter. Yeah. Okay. Next up, Manos wrote, have you ever had a 100x in your investment, like a 100 bagger or 1,000 bagger? Like Peter Lynch, what was the biggest gain you made in your stock investment space while being a VC or investor? Yeah. So for me, it was a company called Spectral Diagnostics, and it went up a couple thousand times. So I invested in the company when I was, I think I was 17 or 18. And what I did was, it was a private company at that point in time in Canada. And so when I was 18, I got a student venture capital loan from the Canadian government. I got it in June of 1990. And I used the $3,000 to invest in my lawn care company. I had my own lawn care company called Student Mowers. It was so much fun. And it was an interest-free grant from the Canadian government, or loan, I should say. And then what I did was, instead of paying it back, this is foolish, but it is what it is, and I'm fully transparent. Instead of paying it back at the end of the summer of 1990, I invested all of it in a company called Spectral Diagnostics. And it was a Canadian biotech company. Basically what they did, it was a private company. So that was my first VC investment, is what they did was they had a little test kit. And in the test kit, you can get a drop of blood, put it in, and it'll tell you within 30 seconds whether you're having a heart attack, or just chest pains, right? And that's a big deal because quite often when you have chest pains, you go right to the emergency room, which can cost you thousands of dollars. And so I invested in it, and then it went public. And then in 1995, 1 week before the vote of Quebec to separate from Canada, Quebec lost the vote by 0.5%. I sold my entire position in SDI, Spectral Diagnostics, and people joke that it stood for Speculative Doctors Incorporated. Yeah. So that's one of my better ones, yeah. But what I find is when you do investment research and you have a portfolio of stocks, a good portfolio each year is probably driven by the increase in price in one or two stocks. And those are usually the stocks you do the most research on. Don't day trade. It doesn't work. And I love to invest in companies that I think are 5x5s. What does that mean? That means a 500% return within 5 years after I do my due diligence. Am I wrong often? Oh my God, yeah. But after I do my research, if I think there's 500% upside, I usually make money on it because I've done my due diligence and I don't sell at the worst time. Okay. Hey, Caroline, how are you? Good to see you. Caroline is from France. She lives in Ontario. I'm looking forward to talking to you today at 10 a.m. On the Silver Call. Okay. And then Manos wrote, thank you for everything, my mentor. God bless you all forever and ever. See you all next week. Thank you for the emoji. God bless you. Namaste. I love it. Thank you. Okay. Next up, I've got Renvir, who wrote here. I bought a put with a $35 strike on Intel 2 days ago. This is a chip from Intel. And I'm already 300% up on my position. Nice. Should I close my position? Yeah. Wow. Wow. Well, I would first of all do research on why Intel dropped. Usually, when I make a couple 100% on an option, I usually close it out. Because most put options you buy are just insurance. And you don't make very much money on them. Yeah. Yeah. I would also, nicely done. But if you go to, and I think you probably price the option using my spreadsheet. If you go to FA44, meaning Finance and Accounting Semester 4, Class 4, and you enter in all the information, meaning the expiration date, the strike price, etc., and what the stock price is at, you could see what will happen to the price of your put option as we get closer to expiration. So change the date on your computer to see what happens. And you might want to look at it that way as well. Nicely done. Nicely done. All right. And then Manos wrote, I hope Ruby the cat is fine and your son is doing great at Berkeley. Thank you. Dude, they grow up fast, man. Andrew is 19 now. Yeah, it's unbelievable, man. And by the time your child is 12 years old, you've already spent 90% of the time you'll ever spend with them. Yeah. And my cat is doing well, thank you. We actually got another cat now as well. It's a rescue cat. And his name is Onyx. But he only responds to "you're okay." And the reason is because he's an adorable little black cat. He was outdoors and he was hurt by a raccoon, and he wouldn't come close to us. And so we'd always say, "You're okay, you're okay," and he'd come. Yeah. So his name is "You're okay." Yeah. Okay. All right. Next up, Mike is hey, Mike. Mike wrote, "Hi, Prof. Hope all is well." From San Francisco State University. Awesome. My favorite school in the world. You wrote, you told us to write down our goals to achieve them. I just sold my first business, a grocery retail operation. Nicely done. I'm interested in the tech sector. Where can I start? Yeah. Yeah. So if you're thinking of starting a technology company, I probably think of a software or internet-based company where you don't have to worry about any inventory issues ever. And before creating that company or spending a penny on it, I want you to write a full business plan first. Yeah. Because starting a business is one of the most important decisions you can make in your life. And if you start it without doing a lot of due diligence, it can hurt your health, your wealth, your relationship with your loved ones, etc. And it doesn't cost you anything to write a business plan first. And as part of my MBA degree program, if you go to the third semester in the entrepreneurship track, that's E31, there's 5 classes in a row on how to write an amazing business plan as part of my venture capital bootcamp. You can learn more at harounmba.com. Nicely done on selling your retail company. Okay. Next up, Melody wrote, I want to create artificial intelligence with reading. Is it easy to create an app for this with no coding experience? Yeah. What you can do, and a lot of these great AI companies, they're built entirely on ChatGPT. So you can look at companies like Ralph.ai and see what they've done. And that's built on ChatGPT as well. So Ralph AI is a great web service you can use to write better emails or in-mails. You can also look at Chatbase, which also uses ChatGPT, which allows you to have to enter in a gazillion FAQs, and then it can act as a chatbot. Yeah, so check out those two as well. Make sure you write a full business plan first. Yeah. Okay. All right, and then Samuel wrote, I just downloaded your 100 Steps for Investment Excel document from your website as part of the fourth semester of Economics Management Strategy in my MBA program. And then you wrote, I'm not a student yet. Just thought I'd say that. Okay, thank you for that disclosure. I appreciate it. Thanks. Okay, go ahead and use it. It's fine. Yeah. And you'll notice that on each one of those tabs, the 100 tabs in that spreadsheet, if you're ever confused about what the heck a certain step means, just go to row 21 and click on YouTube video. And there's 100 YouTube videos to explain every single step. Yeah, for every tab. Thank you for that. God bless you. Okay. And then Manas wrote, you flatter me a lot. I'm just a little light in front of the sun like you. I just reflect the light I get from you. Oh, God bless you. Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you. Let there be light. This is what my office looks like normally. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Next up, Omar wrote, where do you see the economy in general next year? It looks like we've had a soft landing. You know, soft landing means the economy doesn't really contract as rates are going up, right? So things are looking good. Things are looking good. Now, keep in mind that when the markets are up a lot one year, the stock markets are usually not up the same amount the next year. Usually, right? So this year, the economy has benefited tremendously from the wealth effect of the market going up. And as I mentioned earlier, 2/3 of the US economy is consumer spending. So I don't think we'll be in a recession next year. I think the economy will grow. Probably won't do as well as it did this year. And the markets probably won't do as well either. Yeah, but you have to watch inflation closely. Yeah. And there's going to be a lot of chatter about the election as well and all that stuff. And if certain candidates are looking like they'll win, I don't want to get political, then the market might do better. Yeah. Because the market tends to discount what's going to happen in at least 6 months into the future. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Mindy wrote, hey, Mindy. Mindy wrote, hey, Chris, hope you're well. Can you show us how to add the plugin for chat? Yeah, absolutely. Let's do this. This will be fun. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to ChatGPT. Okay. Let's go here. And in order to use plugins, you have to use ChatGPT 4, which is like $20 a month. Okay. So once you're here, you then go to plugins right here. Okay, let me scroll up a bit. I think you can see that. Okay, no plugins enabled. And then you go to the plugin store. And I'm going to show you how to get this one. So you go to the plugin store. And then what you do is you search for Top Hap, this one here. And then you click install. It's already installed. Okay. Then what you do is once that's been installed, you have to enable it. So I'm going to enable this one here. Okay. Now I'm going to go and get rid of myself in the corner of the screen here, so you can see me. Okay. So you can see the website here. Okay. Give me a list of the 10 cheapest houses with 2 bedrooms in zip code 90210. I'm dating myself there with that zip code. Okay. So it's now going to TopHap and trying to generate this information. And the great thing about plugins is you can do so much more now with ChatGPT. They're not that robust though. This is still kind of like an alpha technology, not even beta. But let's see what it comes up with. See how it takes a little bit of time here. Okay. And there used to be a Zillow plugin. For some reason, it's gone right now. Here we go. The zip code 90210 corresponds to Beverly Hills. Okay. It's giving me information here. Okay. And I'm going to follow up with another request, which is going to be put this into a table. Now, as I mentioned before, this is kind of an alpha technology, right? So it's not that robust. So it wrote here, I encountered an issue. Put them in a table. Here we go. Okay, there you go. All right, to put them in a table. Let me try another one because I actually want to see houses and not just a table with this information here. So let me try another one. Okay. Okay. Give me a table of the 10 cheapest houses in Kansas. And you can use a couple of plugins at the same time if you want to. I think you can select up to 3. And again, this only works if you're using a ChatGPT 4, and it's not that robust. It's kind of like an alpha product here. Here we go. All right, this looks like it's going to work. And it should give us hyperlinks too. There you go. Wow. So this house here, it's coming up with a list of all of them here. So let's go here. 207 School Street is $38,000. Let's see if that makes sense. Let me click this here, see if it works. It looks like it sold three months ago. Yeah. But anyway, you can play around with this if you want to. Again, in order to use plugins, you have to pay for ChatGPT 4.0. Okay, let me stop generating here, and let me go back to Big Chris mode. Hi there. Okay. Okay. Okay, Caroline wrote, unfortunately, I'm going to miss the silver hour today, going to the bank with my girlfriend who is loaning me $150,000. Cool. I wish you a good day. Okay. And congratulations on your investment property also in Nova Scotia you mentioned last week. Okay. Mike wrote, thank you. You're most welcome. Same thing with Melody, of course. My pleasure. Okay, next question is from Michael, who wrote, what will I gain out of your MBA program? What are the main benefits? Is it suitable to students in the UK? Yeah, I have students in every single country in the world. And so I made the program generic enough to apply to everybody. If you're interested in learning more, what you can do is you can just go to harounmba.com. And then there's plenty of FAQs here as well. Here we go. All right. You can click here just to learn about the MBA program or scroll down to learn more about it as well. And the silver program, anybody can start right now. Okay, it's $499. You get a 30-day 100% money back guarantee. And I always tell my students, if you're not getting at least a 10x return on your investment in the first 30 days, please ask for your money back. And if you take silver, then when I do the live versions of this, which is once a year, then you get frontline access and a discount as well. Okay. But to learn more, just go to this website here, and then you could read through all these FAQs here. Yeah. And if you click here on enroll today for silver, obviously it's not going to charge you until you read through everything here. But you can scroll down and see plenty of videos on the program, exactly what you're going to learn. I teach you everything about finance and accounting, entrepreneurship, sales, management, personal growth, and technology. And I'm adding a lot of tech stuff here as well. So recently I added a complete artificial intelligence course, partnered with Luca on this. I also added a complete Excel course, including how to program in Excel, And very soon I'm adding this one as well, a Python course, which you'll get for free. You can scroll down, look at videos, and then the FAQs here, and then the curriculum. It's hundreds and hundreds of hours, and it keeps growing. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. All right. And then Melody wrote, I will use your business plan for this. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So in the MBA program, go to E31 in order to learn more about how to create a business plan. And I talk about it for 15 hours in a row as you answer 700 or 800 questions as part of the Venture Capital Bootcamp in the MBA program in E31. Yeah. And the output is a couple things. Number one, a one-page executive summary. And number two, a 150-page business plan. Yeah. And most business plans that you write, you'll never finish if you do it right. And the reason I say that is because by writing a business plan halfway through, you might tell yourself, oh my gosh, I don't think this is a good business model anymore based on your due diligence. By the same token, most stocks that you do investment write-ups on, you won't invest in. Because part of the way through doing the investment write-up on a stock or due diligence, you might realize, hey, it's not a good investment. And these are many of the templates I provide you with in my MBA degree program. You know, many arrows in your quiver or tools in your toolbox. It's like a safety net to save you from not doing due diligence on a company. Yeah. Okay. Oh my God, Fred, how are you? Fred Mendoza, great to see you, man. It's been a while. I missed you. God bless you. And thank you so much years ago for help on that options elective. So Fred is from DC, works in the healthcare industry, and he actually met Dr. Fauci once. So Fred wrote, what is the Python course going to entail? It's going to be everything about Python from scratch. And there's going to be 4 tracks in it. So that the total addressable market for the course applies to everybody. The 4 tracks are as follows. A beginner track, which assumes you have no coding experience at all. An intermediate track, which assumes you have some coding experience, but not in Python. A genius track, which assumes you have a bunch of Python experience. And an all track, the A track, which means you want to watch every single lecture. And I'm going to be using just a ton of bricks, and this isn't ready for production yet. But I'm using just a ton of Legos in order to explain, logic, variables, what are called methods, etc. And it's going to be fun. And the way that we're going to explain it, and Luca Anderson is going to fly in. He's the guy that I did the complete AI course with. He's going to fly in, and we're still testing it out. But we want to use bricks as well in order to explain how things work. And so when you use something called Google Colab, which is an online Python service you can use for free, kind of like Gmail, but for Python, it color codes objects too. Functions are yellow, objects are orange, etc. So we're probably going to set it up with this as well, just to make it more fun and interactive as well, with lots of Star Wars characters. Yeah, and we got the idea of using Luke because Luca. And by the way, there's going to be a free book in the course as well. But Luca, his last name is Anderson, which is like, Anakin Skywalker. So of course we have Star Wars references as well in that course, just to make it fun. Is the light working? I don't think the light's working anymore. It's too bad. All right. Let's see how it works though. All right, so let me move on now. This is fun. Okay. And then Melody wrote, are you going to do any more courses when you're walking? Like my vlog course, I like it when I'm outdoors. No, thank you for that. Appreciate it. So what I've been doing is I get 20,000 steps every single day in this office. And I also go to the gym. So I'll show you here. Let me see if I can increase. So I've got this stand-up desk I've showed many of you before. Here's all my crap on my desk here. And then what I do is I have a treadmill below me. And I walk at about 5 miles an hour or so all day long. And I know it seems crazy, and this treadmill is really cheap, by the way. It's called Rhythm Fun. It's cheap because there are no handrails on the side. But what I do is I increase the speed to like 5 miles an hour. and I type all day. Okay, I work. Now, if you do this, you have to wear your Apple Watch or your step counter in your pocket because it won't count steps if you're typing. And I also make sure my desk is higher so I have better posture as well. And I came up with this idea when I was biohacking because I thought about when I was younger. When I was younger, when I was in school, my best 1 hour of studying was the first hour of each day. And 1 hour of studying early in the morning was more productive for me than 10 hours at night. And I thought to myself, well, how can I feel like I just woke up all day long? And the way is by exercising while you work. You whistle while you work. And when you exercise while you work, you're taking in lots of oxygen. You're feeding your brain as well. And you feel like you just woke up. So 10 hours of work on a treadmill is like 100 hours. You're 10 times more productive. And that's why I do it. So I tend to do more of it indoors. But the camera you have, which is the Canon M50, is perfect for vlogging outdoors. And I use that same camera that you have for vlogging outdoors because you can turn the camera, the screen around as well. And it's light, it's mirrorless camera. Yeah. Okay. All right. Problem is when you do this, when I do that, I tend to get shiny as well. And before I go live, people that are on TV use makeup as well, just to get rid of the shine. There we go. Maybe I'm beautiful. Maybe it's Maybelline. Okay. All right. Okay. Next up, Melody wrote, "That is amazing, Chris," meaning the plugin. Maybe Zillow has to update a few things in their app. Yeah, I'm not sure. So I used Zillow for a while as a plugin on ChatGPT, and then they removed it. I have no idea why. Yeah. And if you ever use ChatGPT for anything business-related, work-wise, just understand that quite often it's confidently wrong. I say confidently wrong because it gives you a beautifully structured answer quickly, but you got to double-check the sources always. And what I recommend doing is if you write an article that uses ChatGPT just for ideas, at the bottom of that article, put a disclosure saying we used artificial intelligence to get some of the ideas for this article. Yeah. And never copy and paste an entire essay from ChatGPT and use it, because that might be violating copyright law. We don't know yet. The precedents have not been set yet. And my son, who's at Berkeley, he told me that he can't submit papers using AI because the professors have special engines that they use to double check if you used AI. Yeah. So just be careful with that. Yeah. Okay. And Mindy wrote, "Thank you. You're most welcome." And then Melody wrote, "I got my Google certification for Google e-commerce and digital marketing." Nicely done. And one of the toughest algorithms to understand, man, is Google. They change that algorithm all the time. Yeah. And I don't think it's very profitable to use their algorithm anymore or to pay for Google ads. Yeah. And then you wrote here, "I thought it was me. I created 2 with your course and it was not a good business idea." Okay, business plan. Yeah. Okay. It seemed good initially, but the numbers did not match up. Thank you so much for saying that. Because a lot of times when people want to start a company, it might be because they're frustrated at the company they're working at right now. And they think of all the qualitative reasons why this company will do well, but they don't look at the quantitative analysis. And without data, it's a half-baked idea, nothing more. So you always have to look at the size of the total addressable market and create financial statements as well to see how much money you can make in the long run, which I teach in my MBA program as well. And a good sanity check is to understand the size of the market, because we get carried away. Entrepreneurs get carried away. We do. I certainly do. When forecasting how much money, revenue-wise, we think a company will make. We forecast into the future, and it gets so big that it's actually larger than the entire total addressable market, which is illogical. Yeah. And so thinking about the total addressable market when you're creating your financial statements is great. It's like the Senate. It's a good sober second look to make sure that your revenue expectations are not getting too high. Yeah. Okay. And if any of my students in my MBA program, create a business plan, you want feedback, you can always ask me here or during office hours. We have every week during the Zoom office hours, which is after this weekly call. Yeah. And for anybody in my Silver MBA program, there's a 1 hour office hours every week starting at 10 a.m. That's half an hour from now. And it's a Zoom call as well. And I can help you with your LinkedIn profile or anything you want. And for those of you in my Silver MBA program, just go to the first lecture in the curriculum to get this week's and every week's link as well. And thank you. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Oh my God, Maputhi, how are you? Maputhi, you wrote, "Hi, Prof. It's been a little while just passing through the Haroun streets." Awesome. Great to see you. And you're from South Africa, and you graduated several years ago from my Platinum program. I remember that. And I remember you were thinking about an Uber-like service in South Africa. Excellent. I think I met your mom once, too, on a call. It's great to see you. Warm my heart. Good to see you, bud. I hope you've been doing well. Yeah. Okay. Next up, Eric wrote, "How does one find companies that are not listed yet?" Yeah. So private companies don't have to disclose to the public very much information at all. And so the only way to find out about private companies is to go to a venture capital website like crunchbase.com and do a search. Or what you can do is you can go to venture capital websites and see what their portfolio companies are. For example, let's go together to the best venture capital firm on the planet's website, which is Sequoia, which is sequoiacap.com. And you click here on our companies. And what you can do is you can learn about their companies. And they're mentioning Instacart. Instacart went public this week. The stock was up 12% on the first day, which is okay. Usually you get a 30% bump. And the only reason Instacart went public was because they saw that ARM had a decent IPO last week. Yeah. But you can learn about their companies here. A lot of these are public right now. But if you keep scrolling through, you might see some private ones. And another way to find the private ones is you go to our team. And you click on people here and find out what companies they've invested in. And quite often they provide details on it. Here they are right here. So this person here, Bugglemill, is likely on the boards of these companies here because he invested in these companies at Sequoia, Big Eye, ChainGuard, etc. Yeah. Okay. And there's other companies too. You can go to like Andreessen Horowitz. Their website is a16z.com because in between the letter A and Z or Z here is 16 letters. Yeah, and you can do the exact same thing here. You can go to their team and then click on any person here and then find out, let's say crypto. So let's say you want to find out what crypto companies are private that they're investing in. Let me see here. Operations. Here we go, Chris Dixon. Yeah, everybody should follow Chris on Twitter, X. He's great. Okay, and you can find out what companies he's on the boards of, I'm sure, if you keep navigating through here as well. Yeah, okay. Okay. All right, next up, a couple more questions before we wrap it up. Melody wrote, "I love that desk. I have a raised desk, but I manually have to crank it up. What is the name of the treadmill?" Yeah, it's called Rhythm Fun. Let me get the link on Amazon and then I'll show you. Give me 1 second. I haven't shared my screen yet, but I will in a second. Okay, so let me go here to my orders. And again, I'll share this in a second. Okay. Yeah, screw it. Here we go. All right, so here we go. So let's go to treadmill. Okay, so here it is right here. Okay, it's called Rhythm Fun. And the price keeps coming down. I guess competition's a good thing for consumers. It's $300 now. Wow. I think that means with $100 off. Very cool. So this is the one that I use right here. And you can put it under a couch as well if you want to, and you can put it under a stand-up desk. And I'll show you the stand-up desk company I recommend in a second. Yeah. All right. I think it's called stand-up desk. There's one that I used to recommend. Uplift. I think this is the one that I bought. Yeah. Uplift. Yeah. And there's another company that I purchased from before called Fully. And you can customize your desks as well. I think it's 1L, but let me do both of them. Yeah, here it is here. No, it's 2Ls actually. That's smart. They own the URL for both. But here at Fully, you can create and customize your own desk from scratch. And so what I did with my desk here was I actually purchased a desk that's, I think it's 6 to 8 feet wide. And you can custom make it with bamboo wood. You can select the colors, etc. Yeah. So you start like this here. You start with this, and then you can customize it from here, right? So you can select the color of the poles. You can add many different peripherals, etc. And it takes a couple of weeks for them to custom make it and send it to your house. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Next up, we got Dr. Algebra. How are you? Wrote Nikola Tesla walked 10 miles every day. He went through a bunch of shoe leather. You're in good company, Chris. Thanks. I have one thing in common now with Nikola Tesla. Yeah. And actually, Steve Jobs, God bless him, he used to go on a long walk every day at 1 p.m. by himself, and also with his best friend, Elon Musk. Or pardon me, not Elon Musk, his best friend, Larry Ellison. And Larry Ellison is the founder of Oracle, ticker ORCL. And Steve Jobs would come up with his best ideas when he went on walks by himself, and when he went on walks with his buddy Larry Ellison, who almost purchased Apple at one point in the 1990s. Yeah. And I recommend everybody do it. Like, even if you work indoors, like I do, go outdoors once a day for a walk. It helps you, and it's good to get vitamin D. I wear sunblock on my face, just, but it's good to do. Yeah, you'll come up with great ideas when you go for walks. And my first 10 or so courses I put on Udemy, I wrote them all, or most of them, on very long walks. Like I would go on 12-hour walks. It's crazy, I know. And what I would do is I would have my iPhone, and I would type in a word, or I'd use SIRI, and I'd have a lot of unstructured notes. And then after my walk, maybe a day or two later, I look at the notes to kind of construct a course. Yeah, it's fun. Okay. And then Eric wrote, can a business plan be done in units instead of dollars? Yeah. You can look at the number of units in the ASP, the average selling price, but ultimately you have to translate it into dollars. It's might be a little bit different for you. And the reason I mentioned that, I think you're in Pensacola, Florida, or Sarasota, sorry. Is because you'd mentioned on this call a couple times that your products are for the U.S. government, DARPA, for example. So you might not have to worry as much about profitability if they're very CapEx intensive, and if you get a grant. Yeah. Okay. And then we got Carol, who goes by Laraxac. Carol, how are you? And Carol, thank you so much for helping me with my new Discord server. What we're going to be doing is for all my MBA students, I think there's 1,000 or more people that are using Slack. We're going to migrate off of Slack, and we're going to move to Discord. And the reason why we're making that decision, and we're beta testing Discord right now, is because when Salesforce bought Slack, they changed the pricing structure to the extent that you now have to pay if you want to look at messages older than 30 days, something like $5 or $6 per month per person. Whereas Discord is open source, will always be free. Cool. So Laraxac wrote, or Carol wrote, hey guys, hey Chris, good to see you. Nice to see you. I was wondering recently if I should get certified when it comes to my English, passing the CAE. Is it worth it, or is it a waste of money? Your English is great, and I've been on plenty of Zoom calls with you. I don't think you need to do that. I don't think you need a certification at all. Yeah, I don't think that would help on a LinkedIn profile either. Yeah, you're great just the way you are, buddy. Yeah. Now, a lot of friends of mine that come to the United States or Canada where I used to live, and they want to learn English, what they do is they turn on closed captions when they're watching their favorite TV shows. Yeah. Next, hey Brian, how are you? Brian is from the DC area, and he has his own wealth management firm. He also has, I think, a 9.2 PSA graded or CGC graded Spider-Man #1 on his wall. Brian wrote, and he's got a real Picasso as well, and Salvador Dali. So Brian wrote, I have tons of questions to ask about investment banking during class. Awesome. And so Brian, you can ask here, or if you want, I think you're going to be joining our weekly Zoom call for Silver students in a couple of minutes. You can ask there if you want to over Zoom. Yeah. And for those of you that are interested in my MBA program, go to harounmba.com. And for those of you who have signed up for my Silver MBA, go to the first lecture to get the link for the 10 a.m. call. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. All right. I am going to wrap up this call right now. And I usually end the call with a life-changing interview that I licensed from the Silicon Valley Historical Association from Steve Jobs. But what I'm going to do now, though, instead, is I'm going to end it with the vlog that I published many years ago that I'm most proud of. God bless you all. Please click like and subscribe, etc. And I'll see you next week and every single week. Take care. If you bully people at work, meaning if you're a corporate bully, then I want you to keep watching this. Otherwise, don't watch the rest of this vlog. It's going to be out there today. But for you, the corporate bully, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being such a jerk. And by the way, you peaked in high school and you're so insecure that you treat people poorly. I get it. You're really insecure. I understand. But you know what? In a bizarre way, and I think what you've done at work, treating people poorly, is disgusting. But I think in a bizarre way, I want to thank you because you've motivated the people that you've treated poorly to quit and to join another company, or you've motivated them to start their own companies. You see, frustration in business can be a beautiful thing. And I say it with love in my heart, because if you're frustrated at work because you're being treated poorly, and I've been treated poorly many times before, then that forces you to get outside your comfort zone and get a better job, or better yet, start your own company. If I can be resourceful in any way, helping you start your own company, please let me know. Thank you. Not the bullies, just the people who are being bullied, like I was. Thank you.